morning. I want to go ahead and get started this morning. We've got a very prestigious panel here. They've got a lot to say, and I know you want to hear it. My name is Dennis Milston with Cyrus LLC. I'll be moderating the panel today. I'm going to skip most of the housekeeping notes because you've been through this already this week. I want to thank you all for coming to a Friday morning session on the last day of the conference. We were worried that there wouldn't be a whole lot of people here, and a number of us spent a lot of time recruiting, so we're glad to see that you're here. Just a moment of thanks to our sponsors. They do help keep this conference reasonable for small businesses to attend, so if you have the opportunity, stop by their booths, tell them thank you. Questions will be taken at the end of the presentation after everybody has spoken. I do ask that you stand at the mics and give your name and the firm that you work for. This session is being audio recorded, so that's why we ask for you to use the mics. Presentations will be posted on the SAME website shortly after the conference, so you don't have to take pictures and write down a whole bunch of notes. You can go get the presentations. Without any further ado, I'd like to introduce the panel in the order that they're going to speak to you today. First is David Alvarez. He comes from the VA's Office of Capital Asset Management. Jenna Williams, who is the VA CFM Western Region, and hopefully I don't mess this one up. EJ Jean-Jacques, who is our Eastern Region Facilities Acquisition Director. And then we have Brigadier General Antoinette Gant. And I do want to take a moment to congratulate General Gant on recently pinning on. And I will add a note that some people stopped by my booth and we're very excited to point out, if you look at the pictures of the engineer officers with SAME, there are now 4 women general officers in the Corps of Engineers. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to the panel and help with questions later.
All right, good morning. Let's go ahead and get started. My name is David Alvarez, like Dennis said. I've been with the VA system for about 34 years now, so been in it for quite a period of time. I think our titles didn't necessarily mean a lot to you when we went through them, so we'll get to that in a moment, because our opportunities are much different, but yet they are all opportunities. So, you know, mission, vision, values, you have to put them up there, but I think that obviously a lot of uniforms in the room. I'm assuming there's a lot of veterans in the room. I'm not a veteran. Thank you for your service if you were. I think it's a mission that gets in our blood, so to speak. So I've always felt in the VA that as opposed to just, you know, building something, it always feels like we're building something that matters. I find that with our staff. I find that with a lot of our contractors. It's a sort of work that I encourage contractors to do. It can be difficult to get into healthcare. It can be difficult to work for the government. But I do think it's something that can be quite beneficial for you as a business, and I think there's that kind of intangible that goes along with it. Organizationally, things are a little bit interesting here, so we'll step through that briefly. It'll give a little perspective, particularly the differences between the things that Jenna and I speak about. So like any government agency, we have the Secretary of Veterans Affairs. Office of Construction and Facilities Management is a staff office at the VA level, so they provide services. We would be a client of theirs perhaps for the larger construction opportunities, which is I know what a lot of folks are here for. When you get down into the administration levels, we have the cemetery system, and a number of you may have attended those opportunity sessions. They're typically serviced by CFM in that they don't tend to have the capabilities to do their own work. The Veterans Benefits Administration is largely leased space through GSA, so you don't end up with a lot of opportunities there. Typically, when you look at the opportunities and the funding for VA, the 600-pound elephant in the room is the Veterans Health Administration. So that's the medical centers, the regional offices. That's the large footprint where the healthcare is provided, so to speak. So the dotted lines that you see there from CFM are that once projects exceed a certain size, and Jenna will talk about that, they really exceed our competency at most of our medical centers to manage them. So we turn over to professionals who manage them. And then obviously in some cases we are clients of the Army as well for the really big projects, so to speak. The organization a little down lower doesn't matter quite as much in terms of the organizational chart, but we do have an operations branch. Like anything else, we're regionalized to where all the individual medical center executives report up to a structure that comes up to what's shown as operations there. And then for the money and the program side, which is where I work in VHA, that's where the money is distributed and programmed and operated. So we operate more like a franchise. So if you're going to do work for a medical center, then you will be dealing with a regional structure and not necessarily a single point of contact from a knowledge perspective. So the way we're structured, and we have our organizations both overlaid here, is VHA breaks themselves into 18 what we call VISNs or networks that each have their own executives, multi-billion-dollar budgets. So we tend to correspond and work with the VISNs in terms of approving projects, getting money distributed, kind of tracking how they're doing and that they're following within the appropriation rules, I guess would be a good word. And so typically you as a contractor for opportunities when you're going to work with VHA will probably end up entering in at either the medical center or the network level. So it's a little more work than making a single phone call to get a list, but I think it's, depending on whether you're national or regional, you can certainly find a lot of work in the areas where you feel that you're competent to do business. Jenna will talk a little bit more about it, but CFM kind of overlays on the VHA regional structure in 3 different regions. It's geographic. They'll move the lines depending on, how much work there is, so to speak. And then they have a central group that does the cemeteries nationwide. That is kind of a specialty, and it just makes more sense to operate that way. So in terms of the opportunities, and I can't see the paper, see the numbers there. What we're seeing, minor construction for us is the new construction. It's the new buildings. It's the new space. Once it gets too big, we turn it over to CFM to execute for us. Our opportunities look like they're growing a little bit. The numbers there are 72 new starts on designs, which you don't care about as much, and 68 construction projects. So you may feel that you're seeing minor growth. You're actually seeing some fairly significant growth there, and that a number of the construction opportunities are actually still carrying over from last year. So, the escalation you're seeing in your costs are certainly making them into the bids that we're seeing, and we're having to, go through and get everything structured so we can keep things within programs. So we are seeing some growth in there. So for 72 new design opportunities, you can expect in a couple of years that those are going to flow in through the construction opportunities that I think most of you are interested in. It's a moderate sized program at this point, $500 million. Of that, about $100 million is carryover. So it's a relatively small program, and it's really small compared to the sort of stuff that Jenna does. Really the bread and butter for most medical centers is what we call non-recurring maintenance. So I'm a former facilities guy, worked in the field a really long time at hospitals, and this was our bread and butter. This is our infrastructure, this is our electrical stuff, our mechanical stuff, all the things that make the medical center run. We also do a good deal of renovations within this program, and so if you look at the number up top, it's over $3 billion. That's much more than we've historically done in the system. So we've pretty much emptied out our pipeline in terms of getting all the things that have been designed out on the streets and are scurrying to catch up with that. So I think in terms of opportunities for construction, it's going to be much higher than it's been in recent years because we can afford to do what we've developed, and we're pushing a lot into the pipeline, much more than we've been able to do in the past in an effort to recapitalize. I think the other opportunities that can bring from some of you is you're builders, you're constructors, you're also construction managers. And we've had some, I'll say, difficulty ramping up. I mean, you start to double, triple your budgets. You need a lot more folks to run that at the medical center level. And that's been a challenge for us, where we're actually reaching out into a lot more construction management type contracts where we're almost supplementing our staff, as it were, through that direction. So if that's a service that you offer, you may want to bring that up as you're dealing with some of the medical centers, and that it's difficult to push things through the pipeline if you don't have anybody to manage them. So the opportunities here, 404 construction projects, that is actually significantly understated, in that may be what we track at our level, but there's a financial line which below us, it just becomes a blob of money, so to speak. So I would probably estimate that the opportunities are probably double that, although many of the doubling of that is the smaller sub $1 million opportunities. That's a lot of money in my bank account, but that isn't necessarily a lot of money when you put into a medical center. And so when you want to work with medical centers, or you want to work with networks, if you've not done so before, usually your entree, it's going to be those phone calls, it's going to be the work at the regional level. And so here's the contact information for all. These are engineer types. I'm an engineer. What we call our capital asset managers. So they manage the programs regionally in terms of authorization of projects, funding of projects, tracking to make sure that they, do what they say they're going to do. And that's usually a good entree to have a honest discussion about the sort of workload that's coming down the pike. Each one of those capital asset managers will have a counterpoint on the contracting side of the house. I don't have their names here. They speak differently, right? Because you're starting to get into procurement integrity items, things that have come close. If you're interested in doing work at the medical center level, and I would encourage you to do that, this is a good entree for folks to talk about, what's coming down the pike, what opportunities exist in the areas that we may do business in, so to speak. So I would encourage you to contact these people. They will certainly be open to talking to you. We do find that to a certain extent, government is counter-cyclical, right? So there's a lot of work out there right now, which sometimes makes it difficult for us to attract vendors, or we get the higher prices because there's just so much work out there that there's a lot of overhead in dealing with the federal government. What I will say is, if you're looking at some of the bigger opportunities, healthcare is different if you've not worked in healthcare before. Working at an active medical center is much different than most things that you will ever do. And so there are a lot of competencies that you can gain in the smaller projects. We often find that when the contractors are there on the big stuff, they're often looking at a lot of the local stuff to kind of fill things up, fill holes in their staffing, so to speak. So it can be difficult to get the really big projects until you've gained a competency on the smaller projects. Like anything else, if we're doing a best value or looking at who should we select, everybody tends to lean very heavily to those who have done similar work before. So this can be very profitable to you. It is something that takes some time to develop the knowledge and the competencies, but I'd certainly encourage you to do that from where I sit. We have a lot of recapitalization to do. We've got a lot of money to do it, and we need your help to do that. And I think I'm going to pass it on to Jenna.
Okay, great. So thank you for that, David. The biggest takeaway on this slide is the differences between the offices. So David pretty much went over all of it, but the Office of Construction Facilities Management, where I come from, we are responsible for land purchase, planning, design, construction for our major projects, which we consider those over 20 million. When it goes beyond 100 million, that's when we partner with the Army Corps of Engineers to execute those projects. So when you see this is really important, because when you're reaching out to whomever to find out about upcoming projects, if you don't know who you're talking to, you may just kind of go down the road of a web and then get frustrated, and we really do want to do business with great partners like yourselves. So this is the meat and potatoes, I think, what everybody's here for. So if you have your cameras, you can take a photo. But this is what we are tracking for CFM managed projects. So these are the ones between 20 million and 100 million. There might be a couple exceptions in there. So long as the appropriation comes when we hope it does, then these should be the timeframes in which we put these out. And then this is a list of the construction opportunities we have with our USACE partners. I will keep that up there. And if you all have any questions on these specifically when the presentation is over, we've got our Eastern Region director is in the room. There he is, Al, and I believe Fran from Central may have stepped in. So we should be able to answer some questions further if you have them. And now we will go over to how you do business with us.
So, a quick overview. The agency's shifting, CFM is shifting. Just imagine our average facility is 50 years old, right? Pre 9/11, the average veteran was 65 years old. Currently, the average veteran is 37 years old. Also, imagine where the veterans receive care is changing, right? So we have the Mission Act in 2018 that is helping shift the agency facilities-wise. The PACT Act just got signed. Also, the BUILD Act is in process. So just, we're shifting, we're changing, and there's so many things going on. And I just want to go over some of the stuff that we have been dealing with. Inflation, as you guys know, is a big problem. So we've seen, there's a report that came out recently, we've had 70% cost growth over the last 10 years on our projects. Some of it is attributed to inflation, some of it is just, hey, changes or unforeseen conditions, could be anything else. Budget authorization, I'll leave that there. You guys already know what's going on with that. You know, we have our plan, we have our ops plan, but if we don't get the budget, it's hard to actually execute. Supply chain's a problem. It's been a problem for the last 3-4 years. Workforce and labor, certain sites like Puerto Rico, you know, it's just, it's tough. You know, we can't get the labor, we can't keep the labor. And, you know, we have 3-4 active projects with that one site, and it's tight, so just, you know, cost growth already went over. Legislative authority and alternative delivery, I know it was a big discussion in the general session yesterday. The VA really doesn't have much authority for ADM. You know, we design build is the thing, ECI and all these other things that we want to engage, but we don't have the legislative authority to do it yet. So we do have funding, we do have support from both sides of the aisle, but we just don't have the legislative ability to do certain things that we want to do. Lack of competition and new market entrants on the mega projects, the big projects, the 20 to 100 million. There's 2 or 3 key players that, you know, bid on every project. And some projects we only have one bidder. So that's a constraint that we have as well. Gains, I would say new project management techniques from industry. I think you guys are innovative. You guys are bringing new ideas to the VA. You know, the way we do business, we're listening, we're engaged. We're here this week. Most of the leadership for CFM is here, but there's a continuous engagement with industry. That's what we've been working on. It's not just, hey, we're in Sammy this week, but I think throughout the year we want to do continuous engagement with industry. Again, legislative and budget support, we have it. You know, it's just, is it timely? Is it timely? Yeah. Advancement in skills and competencies, we've noticed that industry is bringing a lot of competency to the table, so that's definitely a gain. And, you know, we're creating great partnerships, more efficiency in project delivery. Industry, again, it's a gain for us. We're seeing more efficiency across the board. The rule of 2, my favorite subject, of course. It's public law, it's mandated, there's no way around it, but, you know, 2 or more contractors capable, right? And capable doesn't really mean, hey, I can do it. It means, do you have a track record? Do you have the past performance that said you can do it? Of course, fair pricing. Can we get fair pricing? Is it going to be competitive? So our priority is basically from 20 to 100 million to do the market research. If we set it aside, we set it aside, but if we can't, the market research does not say we can for a small business or service disabled, we don't set it aside. That doesn't mean there's not opportunities for small, you know, subcontracting, opportunities for small businesses to get VA business. That's ample opportunity. Market research, again, 817, it goes back to market research. what does it show? You know, we use all types of market research, industry days, SAM.gov, you know, the DAP, the Direct Access Program, which is below. No matter what it is, the source is sought, please respond, because we need the market research to determine which way we're going to move with the acquisition. It's imperative that you respond. If you don't respond, we don't know. Some valuable websites, of course, our CFM main website. On that website, it has a TIL, which you should be familiar with, which is the Technical Information Library. Yes.
Great job.
All right. So, and the Azawu website is very valuable for small businesses. The contract opportunities is also there, so you can see the forecast. And the biggest thing, if I was a small business, you got to know what's coming out. So you have to see our budget, the president's budget, what we provided, what we submitted for the ask for all our projects, and that's on there. So you got to become familiar with the submission.